let's talk through another issue that's developing in the state of Queensland, Dan, and that is around prostitution decriminalisation for Queensland, a little bit similar to some push that's been going on in South Australia. But what's the latest for what's happening in Queensland?
Well, there's some draft legislation that's to be before the Parliament by the 27th of November. And in Queensland has some restraint on prostitution or sex work. It's only legal in licensed brothels or a sole trader working alone. So it's quite confined. And there are penalties in Queensland for street-based work, so it's confined. So the plan here is to, basically make it, free and open in the way it is in Victoria right now. That street work, gutter crawling, all of that will be part of the culture. That's what they're trying to introduce. So again, we ought to be very concerned about this progressive politics. And, this is a Labor Queensland government bringing this in. There is no upper house, there's no checks and balances on this. So we're very concerned where this will go. But, I suppose we celebrate this, Neil, that in South Australia, the good people in the South Australian Parliament have resisted 15 attempts over, probably 15 years to decriminalise prostitution. So that's great work in South Australia. Let's hope we find a few politicians like that in Queensland. But I think there being only one single house, that's not likely. But it does show the bravery of good politicians who will stand up for values we see in South Australia.
What seems crazy is that it's somehow promoted as something that's good for women. But as I understand it, the evidence that decriminalisation, when that happens, actually very harmful to women. Any thoughts here from you, Dan?
Well, it's the myth of the empowered prostitute that is brought out by the industry that seek to make money out of it. But the truth is that women caught in prostitution, and they are mainly women, are very disempowered. They're often from Eastern European or Asian countries. They often have very little grasp of English. They often have their passports removed from them by these owners. And so these people are completely disempowered and taken advantage of by men who it should not be legal for men to purchase sex. That's an incredible exploitation of women, and that could be part of the commercial trade in our country, whereby taxes are paid from, is an outrage.
There was a model that was being promoted called the Nordic model, and there's been some fine-tuning, some tweaking, name change to the equality model. Give us your insights here, because it's not as though our legislatures don't have some choices that could actually favour and be good for women and for all society, but they seem to be rejecting those. What are your thoughts on the equality model?
It's really taking hold in the Scandinavian countries that have a particular, concern for protecting women. We see it in Sweden, Norway, Iceland. It's also been passed in Northern Ireland and France recently. So basically what this way of regulation is that the punishment, the stigma is on the men who it would be an offence to purchase sex. Women who are caught in prostitution are not penalised in any way, but they're given a good exit programs to exit the industry and to find, dignified, meaningful work. So the strategy is outlaw the purchase of sex, the exploitation of women, which should be something that all progressives, all feminists agree on. And in fact, many feminists do. And so that's why the feminists have led the charge on this in the Scandinavian countries. There's some great work being done in the South Australian Parliament and in other groups around the country, Western Australia as well, to see this equality model or known as the Nordic model of regulation being applied. So let's hope that works. It'll help a lot of women and help a lot of families.
So there's going to be a battle on in the state of Queensland, and I know listeners can hear your heartbeat in all of that. I mean, there needs to be some feminists who might have been battling on all sorts of different fronts for all sorts of different weird and wonderful ideas. Well, here's something that really would benefit women. Time to get on this bandwagon and become part of a battle in the state of Queensland.